Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this special night. I'm Tim Abbott. I'm the Foundation Secretary of the John and Pat Hume Foundation. I'm not Declan Lawn, the creator of Blue Lights, who is meant to be the chair tonight, but over the weekend he had to pull out. So I did try a few other journalists, but they weren't available. So you're stuck with me. But I do know that Blue Lights is going to be very interesting in September. The storyline is very pertinent to some of the issues that have happened in the last number of months. That's all I can say. I'm sure you all want to watch it in due course. So this event's been organised by the John and Pat Hume Foundation, which was set up in 2020 to honour the legacy of John and Pat Hume, but more importantly to inspire future leaders in peaceful change making. And we have some current leaders here tonight and some young people as part of the panel who are future leaders as well. And it's done in partnership with Orla Mallon, who's the daughter of Seamus Mallon MP, former Deputy First Minister, who, as Orla will say as we close, was one of the keenest sports people you could possibly meet. And at the back of the hall, you can see some of his photographs from his days playing for Armagh Miners, golfing in Rosapeta with some famous people and so forth. The one picture that's missing is his love of horse racing. Somebody said, did he ride horses? No, but he certainly backed them. And as Mark will know and testify, there was many negotiations, very serious negotiations in different parts of the UK and Ireland. And Seamus Mallon would pass a note to one of his fellow colleagues and would go round the table to the appointed person. And that person would leave the room. And Seamus, people were saying, what's that about? What's that about? What's that about? So at the break, they would go up to the person and say, what was that about? Is there something breaking? He says, no, he wondered he had 50 quid in a favourite Newry. That was Seamus Mallon, who always had cash. He didn't have cards, which is another story as well. But obviously, Orla, we're delighted that we're here tonight to honour again your father and the work and his legacy. And obviously, the theme is around Shared Homeplace, which is the title of his book, and the power of sport and reconciliation. And I think we have some really interesting speakers who will elaborate on that. And obviously, Seamus, in that book, talked about the need for genuine reconciliation of conflict and tradition using peaceful means. His desire was to build a warm, generous, and inclusive shared home place on the island. He understood that as a passionate sportsman, whether it's Gaelic, soccer, rugby, a keen golfer, that sport can be a medium for building together relationships across communities. So we're delighted that Jarlath Burns, President of the GAA, has joined us tonight to deliver a short address. We're delighted with the incredible athlete Ciara Mageean, who's joined us from Portaferry tonight. And we have two young people, relatively young. Aoife Redmond from the Peace Players, whose mission is to unite and empower young people from all parts of the community. And also Adam Doak, who is doing this on the basis that I buy him 6 pints after the event, who has been involved with the cross-community Limestone United project, but he plays now for Brentwood in Belfast. So they are young people involved in grassroots peace and reconciliation. So they bring some grassroots in a commentary around the whole experience. It's also this event is part of UN Peace Building Week, which provides a dedicated platform to advance dialogue, share experience, and strengthen partnership across peace-building communities. And they realise that, especially in conflict zones, that sport can be a unifier. And we know that in so many different ways. Obviously, there's challenges. It has been in the past. We might touch on some of those tonight. But in terms of advancing peace, if you can bring people together, and they can be competitive on the field of sport, but it can build friendships, mutual respect, and a peaceful encounter. So we're delighted that the UN Peace Building Week have adopted this event as well as part of their programme of events based in New York. So I want to invite now Jarlath Burns to speak. Obviously, he's very familiar to the audience in Newry and Armagh. He became the 41st president of the GAA in February 2024. He's a member of the Silverbridge GAA Club in Armagh and has served club, county and province with distinction on and off the field. Jarlath is also a secondary school teacher and principal of St. Paul's in Bessbrook in Armagh. So we're delighted he's here. It's a very busy schedule. You may have seen some of young Gaelic players in the lobby earlier, and they are actually from Boston. But actually, bizarrely, Mark, they're playing in a féile in Derry, and this is the closest hotel they could get. That's some journey to play Gaelic, from Boston to Newry to Derry on a daily basis. But again, that shows you the power of sport, that it can bring people together internationally. So, Jarlath, delighted if you would join us.
Gurmagad Tim, agus me intasas da an shahwar maskanach agus torch hora an almost of in a mass andorn agamar John Hume agus Kaimirag. There are come heart an shomer sa fecum dini Uachtarán agus John agus mass andorn agus so honor intachtom vehor in maskanach. And thank you for inviting me here this evening. When people talk about reconciliation, they usually start with politics. They talk about agreements with governments, institutions, all the rest of that. And all of these things matter, of course. They help bring peace to this place. But if you've lived here, you know that reconciliation doesn't really happen in stormont buildings or conference halls. It happens when people meet. It happens when they work together. It happens when they stop seeing each other as labels and start seeing each other as neighbours. And that's where sport comes in. I've spent most of my life involved in sport, obviously the GAA. And one thing I've learned is that sport gets people into the same room who otherwise might never meet. A child doesn't care much about politics when they're chasing a ball around a field. They care about making the team, enjoying themselves, and just being with their friends. The friendships come first, and the understanding comes later, and that matters. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge Ciara Mageean, who is sharing the platform tonight. Like everyone else, I watched with great admiration the courage and honesty with which Ciara spoke about the health challenges she has faced in recent months. For years, we have admired her achievements on the track, but perhaps her greatest example has been the strength and dignity she has shown since receiving such difficult news. I don't want to speak for Ciara, but I often think when somebody receives a diagnosis that changes their world, it can bring a certain clarity to, all of a sudden, a lot of the things that seem important become much less important. It reminds us of what really matters: our health, our family, and our friends. The people who stand by us when life gets difficult. Sometimes in Northern Ireland, we can become trapped in arguments that have been going on for generations. We spend endless hours debating symbols, identities, and positions. We can become consumed by things that in the grand scheme of life are not nearly as important as we think they are. When somebody faces a serious illness, all of that noise tends to fade into the background, and what remains is our common humanity. The fact that before we are nationalists or unionists, before we are Irish or British, before we belong to one tradition or another, we are simply people. And I think sport reminds us of that better than anything else. I think it's also worth noting that Ciara comes from Portaferry, a place with its own strong sporting traditions and identity. Her story has inspired people right across this island, regardless of background, politics, or religion. Nobody watches Ciara race and wonders how she votes. Nobody asks what tradition she comes from. They simply see someone striving to be the very best that they can be. And there's a lesson in that for all of us. I come from South Armagh. Like many people in this room, I've lived through very difficult times. I've seen what division can do to communities. I've seen suspicion between people who often know very little about one another. And if I'm honest, the GAA has often found ourselves right in the middle of that. The reality is that many people within unionism still see the GAA through a lens that was formed a long time ago. Some have made their mind up about us without ever even setting foot inside a GAA club. And that's disappointing, because if they did spend a bit of time around a club, they discover pretty quickly that we're not nearly as interesting or as threatening as they might imagine. We're a sporting and community organisation. We're trying to coach children. We're trying to keep our clubs running. We're trying to improve facilities. We're trying to support volunteers. We're trying to give people somewhere to belong. And maybe we're trying to win in All Ireland. And that's it. funny thing about the GAA is that the public think our work is what happens on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. The matches, the trophies, the county teams. But anyone involved in a club knows that that's only a small part of it. The real work happens on dark winter nights when somebody opens up the hall. It happens when volunteers spend hours organising events. It happens when someone checks in on an elderly member. It happens when a family suffers a bereavement and the club quietly rallies around them. It happens when a young person who is struggling finds friendship and confidence through sport. These things never appear on a scoreboard, but they're the most important things that we do. I've often said that if you put a GAA club into a community, you don't just get football and hurling. You get volunteerism, you get leadership, you get people working together, you get young people learning responsibly, you get a stronger sense of community, and you also get people who are looking out for each other. And those things matter whether you're a nationalist, a unionist, or neither. One of the best examples of this is the newest club in the north, and that's East Belfast GAA. What has happened there over the last number of years has been genuinely remarkable. Not because they've won matches, because actually they've won very few matches. Not because they've built facilities, because they're struggling to find a place, but because they've built relationships. They've shown that a GAA club can exist and thrive in a community where many people would once have viewed it with suspicion. People got involved because their children got involved. They came to training, they volunteered, they helped out, they became curious. And curiosity is a very powerful thing. Because once people become curious, barriers start to come down. It's much harder to fear something when you've actually experienced it. East Belfast haven't solved every problem, and that's not why they exist. Nobody is pretending it has, but it has shown what is possible. It has shown that the GAA can be part of building bridges. Now, I also think we need to be honest. The GAA has made huge efforts to open our doors, to engage, and to reach out. We need to keep doing that. But reconciliation can't be a one-way process. At some point, there also has to be a willingness from people outside the GAA to come and see for themselves who we are. Not who someone told them we are, not who they read about, not who they think we are, who we actually are. Because if they did, I think they would find a lot more that unites us than divides us. The older I get, the more I believe that reconciliation isn't really about grand gestures. It's about ordinary people sharing ordinary experiences, standing together on a sideline, coaching a team together, helping to organise an event, or just having a conversation, sharing a cup of tea. These things sound small, but they're not. They're how trust is built. They're how respect is built. And ultimately, they're how peace is built. When I look around me today, I do have reasons to be hopeful. Young people are far less interested in carrying old baggage than previous generations were. They're more comfortable with difference. They're more willing to mix. And sport is helping that happen. The GAA doesn't have all the answers. Some people would say we're part of the problem. I disagree with those. No sporting organisation has all the answers. But I do believe we have something valuable to contribute. Every day in thousands of communities, we bring people together around a common purpose. Every day, our volunteers give their time for others. Every day, children learn teamwork, respect, and friendship. And every day, communities become a bit stronger because of it. For me, that's where the real power of sport lies. Not in the trophies we win, not even in the matches we play, but in the people we bring together. And in a place like this, with our history, that might be one of the most important things that sport can do. Ciara Mageean.
Could I ask Ciara, Adam, and Aoife to join us up here? Any seats will do. Thanks, Jarlath, for that comprehensive commentary in terms of your role and the GAA. And obviously, the GAA motto is where we all belong, which is, sorry, I had to take a Sorry.
Sorry. I know I'll catch off in the middle of this. So I'm not done in the dirty. He can't get the bottle open either.
I am here till tomorrow morning.
And remember, Jarlath, this is on video.
It was slipping.
There you go, Ciara.
Thanks, Jarlath. The GA motto is where we all belong. And I was reading a survey, I think it was SuperValue did it last year, found that GA clubs have never felt more welcoming and inclusive. And I don't know whether that was an All Ireland survey or not. That you can, but the GA has this great tradition of being rooted in our communities. My kids in West Belfast play for St. Teresa's. It's not the biggest club in West Belfast by any means. And all my friends said, why did I play for us and St. Paul's? But I thought it's our parish, it's our local community, so I wanted them to play there. And it's been great. We're not the best team in West Belfast, obviously, or Belfast, but it does have that sense of community and inclusion. So how can we encourage others to see that in a more open way? But you mentioned about what's happened in East Belfast, and I think also in your How to Gael podcast, that you said that the Orange Order evolves exactly the same sense of community and identity. All those values are important to us. And some people may disagree with that, but they're two big cultural organisations on one side and one sport and cultural community organisations on the other. How do we try to encourage those conversations, those quiet moments where we can build confidence between communities about reconciliation, and how can the GAA play a more significant role in the future in that?
It's interesting you mentioned the Orange Order there, and there was quite a lot of commentary around that remark that I made. What I was saying was that they're not, you can't compare the GAA sporting and cultural organisation with a religious institution like the Orange Order. But what I was saying was that both organisations evoke the same sense within people of pride in your community, pride in who you are, pride in your wee Orange Hall. Like if you talk to David Scott about this, the education officer for the Orange Order, who's a good friend of mine, he will say that. He says, you have your club, and you have your underage, and you have Silverbridge, and it means an awful lot to you. I feel exactly the same about our wee hall, about our wee band that we walk with. And that was the point that I was making. And sometimes you have to make a big leap of faith into other people's worlds to understand what I was saying in my speech, our shared humanity. We're all human beings. We all have the same sense of who we are and who we want to be. And what I always used to find was, I'm sure Mark Durkin will understand this, because you're a veteran, Mark, of Northern Irish politics. And whenever there would be a febrile atmosphere and things would be very bad, an Orange Hall would be burnt. And then a GAA hall would be burnt. And then another Orange Hall. And us in the Orange Order would be sitting watching going, what's this got to do with us? But people would be taking out their frustrations with what was happening from the other community on the GAA on one side and on the Orange Order. And I used to always think, could we not come together with the Orange Order, make a joint statement and say, we are both trying to do the best for our communities, please keep us out of this. And that's how the GAA manages it. You will see us a few weeks ago or a few months ago in Stormont, and Justy bats for us all the time in Stormont. Justy, I always call him, he's the GAA MLA in Stormont, Justy. And won an All-Ireland 2002, and fair play to you, Justy. I know, and shouldn't. It was a very special day for all of us. But I watched that. The GAA being fired around Stormont. We're not going to remark on that. We're not going to make any comment on it, because sometimes making a comment makes things worse. So we just sit back. We don't get involved in controversy. We try and say, even the casement stuff, which is very controversial, we try and stay out of it, try and be the bigger person. When the whole business with East Belfast GAA and Hollywood Cricket Club, if you remember last year, we stayed clear of that. We said, we're not making a statement. We're not going to let other people posture and make grand gestures. We're going to be the bigger person. And that's our best position to take, to be honest, Tim. Just try and stay clear of the political aspects of life in Northern Ireland, because the GAA is all about identity, but Northern Ireland politics is identity politics. It's split along sectarian lines. So we don't need to be adding to that.
Absolutely. Again, you mentioned Mark, and obviously when you were talking about the quiet conversations, and politicians, rightly so, get criticised from time to time, especially now. But the quiet conversations, when John Hume and Jerry Adams were speaking, as Mark will know, in Clonard, in Fitzroy Church between Republicans, Loyalists, Unionists, civic leaders. Nobody knew they were happening. And they built trust that helped. And they were killing each other. Some of the people in the room were organising killing of others. But those quiet conversations through Alex Reid and Father Jerry Reynolds played a critical moment. I was at, and you'll know the story, I can't reveal it all obviously, but I was at a private session about reconciliation 2 weeks ago, and there was people from the Loyalist Republican background and other civic leaders and people involved in peace and reconciliation. And there was a minister there that has been involved in conversations in the part of the north with the GAA. And then, unbeknown to him, on Sunday service, when he left the back of the church, there was 3 of the GAA men that had to come on to attend the service. And they weren't invited. He didn't say, you have to come. They just decided, he says, you've come to us, we want to come to you. And it was a quiet moment, and it was pretty, the way he described it was pretty emotional for him and for them. So those quiet moments can play a big role in terms of going forward. Ciara, if I can come to you, and thank you for coming tonight. And obviously, we will concentrate initially, because obviously, Jarlath mentioned the journey that you're going on, the constant journey at the moment, but obviously, your career as an athlete has been remarkable. But let's start back to the start, because you're born and bred in Portaferry, and Joe Boyle sends his best wishes to you tonight. And obviously, I was thinking when Jarlath was speaking, it's in the Ards Peninsula, it's a tiny wee community, but the fierce rivalry between Portaferry, Ballycran and Ballygantlet is nothing to behold. So how important was Portaferry and the GAA and Camogie to you in terms of your career as an athlete?
Yeah, obviously growing up in Portaferry, there's no love lost between our 3 parishes. I always find it more fascinating as I got older, the sheer aggression I had towards literally my closest neighbours whenever we were playing on the camogie pitch. But I've made no secret of it that I cut my teeth in sport playing camogie for Portaferry, and I've said it before, and I'd say sometimes people in the athletic circles are probably like, oh, for goodness sake. But it was my first love, and I still love it more than the sport that I'm more well known for. I felt that the sport of camogie gave me an avenue into discovering who I wanted to be and who I am as a person and an athlete. It's something that I've always chatted about, and I feel very lucky to come from a little small town like Portaferry. Whenever we talk about community, I already had it just there in our little circle of a town. Like, I'll go out at home and run around my hometown, and it's about 2 miles in circumference. Obviously, people live in the countryside, but like my little town's tiny. So I had that amazing community around me. But then within Portaferry GAC and Portaferry Camogie Club growing up, that was a whole other little microcosm of a community for me. My granny was chairwoman whenever I was younger. My uncle's now treasurer. Like, it's something that's really embedded in my family, and the sheer pride that I would feel putting on the blue and yellow jersey of Portaferry. The only thing that comes in parallel to that is sticking the Irish vest on and running for my country. And I feel very fortunate. I think as we're talking, we're looking at the parallels that sport can have to everyday life. And I've always said that I feel like sport is like a little microcosm and reflection on life as a whole. I think for young people, it gives us a safe space to grow and to learn. I was a fierce camogie player and probably more aggressive than I looked out playing camogie than I did on the track, because I had to learn to simmer that down a little bit. But it gave me... you have to tap back into them old roots. But whenever I was on that pitch, I learned about how to be passionate. I learned about how to work hard. I learned about how to have respect for my competitors. I had a fantastic camogie coach growing up, Elizabeth Collins, who was an extremely different personality to me. I am clearly bubbly and outgoing and will chat for days, and Elizabeth is quiet and reserved and would sooner shy away from the limelight. And in that coaching-athlete relationship, I learned so much, because I would be aggressive on the pitch and I'd be the one screaming and shouting. Elizabeth would then call me over and give me little advice on what to do, and say sometimes I didn't behave the way I should. She didn't tell me off. She'd be like, is that how you want to behave? and just said it back to me, and I go, okay. And it's like, how do you want to conduct yourself on the pitch? And I'm like, okay, yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. That's an important lesson. And I think it gives people, and kids and adults included, that safe space to learn, because they're not doing it out on the street. And I think that's something that's so important to try to get kids into clubs, be that sport, drama, art, music. You're in this little group and you learn how to behave in a safe space of people that know you and love you. And I think that development for me was huge. And the conversation you were having about like the Orange Order and the GAA, I find it really fascinating. Like, I grew up in Portaferry, and you know, it's like predominantly a little nationalist town in a peninsula that could have other towns near us that aren't thinking the same way. Nobody questions my voting allegiance, but like, Joe knows me very well because my mummy and gran had me out canvassing for him as a kid. So my affiliations to the SDLP started very young. But, you know, I grew up in a little place where I felt safe, and would just go the other side of the peninsula, and the curbstones were painted red, white and blue. And, you know, if I went up to Newton Ards, maybe mummy would tell me, don't wear your GAA jersey whenever I was a kid. I found that strange. I remember going to a sports hall, and I had a swim cap. I went swimming in Newton Ards, had a swim cap, and it had a hotel in Donegal that we had went on a family home holiday to, and it was in Irish. Somebody came up to me and was like, what's that saying, your hat? And me and my big sister just instinctively knew, okay, let's go take our swim hat off. And there was this like unspoken thing whenever I was growing up. And as I've got older, people have asked me, do you want to speak about like growing up, child of the Troubles? And I was like, don't ask me. I grew up in a little town called Portaferry. I had no experience of that. An undertone of change out of your GAA jersey was there. But, you know, I didn't grow up. I did be asked to go on a podcast, and I was like, go and chat to the boys from Crossmaglen, go and talk to our boxers who box for Holy Rosary. They have a much more, I would only be speaking about some little tone. And I'm so glad to say that as I've got older, that's changed. A friend of mine was like, my wee nieces and nephews are going to a concert and they're about to road, do you think they can wear a GAA jersey? And I was like, I was at Kingfisher in the Odyssey, and of course, thanks to their song Killa, all of the kids were in their GAA jerseys, and they were so happy. And I live in Dunmurry now, probably a different community than I grew up in Portaferry. At our local little pitch, it's like actually a wee cricket pitch, but it's a council pitch. I smile because I go up there and there's somebody pucking about with a hurley stick and a hurley ball. And then the little kids are getting ready for the 12th and practicing their marching and their wee bands and their drums. And I sit in my house and I hear them practicing, and I smile because I'm like, well, there's kids out learning an instrument. And I think there's something beautiful in that. And I think the more our communities come together and learn from each other, then we realize that we have so much more alike than we have differences. And in a world that tries to divide us, I think people from working class backgrounds would realize that those that are trying to put a wedge between us are the ones that we should probably take more difference towards, because they're the people controlling a puppet and they think that they can control us. And sure, look, what spilled out in Belfast recently was something that makes everybody from here absolutely angry. I was angry. I had friends messaging being like, are you okay? And I was like, me and Tommy went out for a fish and chips in Dunmurry. We didn't. Our neighbours were like, clearly we're both from the country. She was like, what the hell were you doing out last night? I was like, I had no food in the house. We needed food. Headed down to Finnehy for a little takeaway. Yeah, I feel very lucky. This is stop. I can speak loud. I feel very lucky to have grown up in a community that made me feel comfortable and safe in the person that I am, to be a proud Irish woman, and then to see absolutely no issue with going out and running for Northern Ireland in the Commonwealth Games, because I am extremely proud of where I'm from. I'm proud of being from Portaferry and absolutely loving playing camogie and being a proud member of the GAA. I'm extremely proud that Athletics Northern Ireland helped me through my juvenile years in my sport, and extremely proud to put an Irish jersey on. And anybody who tries to find an issue with that, I think is more of a reflection of the person that they are.
We just explore the issue of identity for a little bit longer, because obviously, you know, I was Sonia Sullivan was when I was a bit younger, and the world stopped to watch Sonia. The world stopped to watch you there, Kate O'Connor, Rashid Al-Galaki. There's just a remarkable number of athletes. So what's it like in the, when you're all together in the Irish camp? And also, when you did run for Northern Ireland, there were some naysayers again, negative. How did you handle that? And what's your views of identity in relation to those sort of?
Yeah, well, what's it like in the Irish camp? It's good crack. Like, it's the same as anything. We're all like quite individual athletes, so you'll get the quiet ones. It's the same in any aspect. If you see them in a team sport, you know, you have your rowdy ones, you have your quiet ones. I actually, as I progressed through the Irish camp, was like the old one now. Of course, my career came to a sudden end, but yeah, I was that old one sitting. But do you know what? It's great fun. Usually at a championship, say it's a world champs, we come together just for a bit of inside scoop on sport. We come together and, you know, and a world champs or European champs are only there for a brief period of time, usually, unless it's somewhere very far away and we might have a holding camp beforehand. So you're kind of in and out pretty quickly. And look, naturally, you probably gravitate towards your friends on the team and you sit and chat. I'm lucky, I just go and sit with anybody. I'll talk to all of the athletes. Whenever it comes to, say, an Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games, you're often holding camp for longer and you're actually held as a team much closer. And they're multi-sport events. So you get to meet your other fellow countrymen and women who are from other sports that we don't really get to mix with very much, which is something that I've really enjoyed. I was only down in the Institute there, the Irish Institute, yesterday, and the rugby girls came across because it was an Olympic day. We don't get to chat with the girls and the rugby squad very much, not unless we meet randomly at an event. So it was lovely to get to chat to them, and that's the exact same whenever we're off in a major champs. And equally, for me, whenever, like one aspect of competing in the Irish team, and you know, whenever we're talking about identity and bringing people, communities together, we're seeing like much more of like a right-wing view with regards to Irish national, like your national identity. I feel very, very fortunate that a lot more of my Irish counterparts are not just white like me. And it's something that I've had to figure as I'm going along, because my like counterparts who are from, a lot of our young sprinters are Nigerian background and phenomenal young athletes like Rashida and Israel. And the abuse and the hatred they get through social media is something that has really angered me. And I've chatted to our sport and governing body, being like, there's a duty that I have as one of our longest standing white Irish athletes to say, you don't reflect us as Irish people. And you need to stop this. And I think the more all of us speak up against those few that seem to have a really loud voice. And equally, whenever it comes to competing for Northern Ireland in the Commonwealth Games, the previous Commonwealth Games, I felt fairly lucky in athletics, but poor Reese with regards to the International Federation of Gymnastics, saying that he couldn't compete for Ireland at the Olympics in Northern Ireland and the Commonwealth Games, was as stone deaf a response from a governing body or an international governing body that I could ever get my head around. And I can remember being presented with that question from, I think, Nigel at an event, and I was like, sorry, what? They're saying that Reese can't compete for Northern Ireland, and everybody in this room, I don't need to explain to you about the Good Friday Agreement. And I was like, me and Reese are too young to have to be taking on these conversations when all we're wanting to do is, and like, you know, we're sports people, all we want to do is just go out and compete. And Reese is really proud of being from Uachtarán, and I'm so proud that he's only 30 minutes up the road and we have a world champion and an Olympic champion from Uachtarán. My daddy can't get over that, you know, some people who are from the town might not know that Reese is their neighbour, and like, so like Reese had to face that going out to the Commonwealth Games and explain why he can compete for Ireland and for Northern Ireland. I have to do it to my Aussie competitors. They find it strange whenever I'm off racing. They're like, hang on, why are you here? Because you run for Ireland. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I'm getting into history. I was like, I didn't read up enough. I didn't read up enough for this. But yeah, there was a few people and a few little snide comments. So she calls herself an Irish woman and she's racing for Northern Ireland in the Commonwealth Games. Those people do not occupy any space in my head, because they don't want to see us moving on as a community, as a people, as a country. They just want to hold on to, as you said in your opening speech, emotions of the past that didn't serve us in any positive way. I feel really, really proud to represent that little part of the world that I'm from. I played no role in drawing borders in this country. I do laugh. I'm like, listen, I pay my taxes to HMRC. I sat my GCSEs and my A-levels. There's no question about, you know, the system that I grew up in. Whenever I go out there, I don't represent some institution that people like to put a political thing on. I represent all the people from this little small part of the world that we're from. And no matter where I go, everybody's like, oh, the Irish are amazing. They're so hospitable. And I'm like, come up north and you'll find truly good people. No matter where I go and who I meet, there's good people. And the more we look out for those and allow them to represent us, then the better. And when it comes to identity, you know, my counterparts whose mummies and daddies first came to this country, and they're the first generation born in Ireland. They're Irish Nigerian and they're proud. They get to decide what label they put on themselves as their nationality, not some keyboard warrior taken to some vile social media outlet.
Thanks. Thank you. Aoife, I want to come to you in a second, but just to go back, Jarlath, obviously we mentioned the issue of racism, and obviously we've had the hate-filled racist attacks in the last couple of years, but then most recently Belfast across the north in the last 2 weeks. So how does it, you know, obviously we're talking about reconciliation. Sadly, we're having to fight sectarianism and now even greater racism. So how can civic leaders and GAA and others play their role to try to encourage reconciliation between communities? Because the misinformation, social media is just a lie with lies about immigration here, and you know, a third of the social media traffic about the Ballymena riots last year came from the States. So it's a huge battle. But we all have a responsibility as civic leaders and community organisations politically to respond to that. How is the GAA responding to that type of issue?
The first thing you do is you completely ignore social media because it can be very, very toxic, and you just have to avoid that. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to do that when the person who is running Twitter X is Elon Musk, who is egging them on and changing the algorithm to people who want to be toxic. One of the challenges that the GAA has faced is getting people from other nationalities who are what we would call a New Irish to come in to play our games. But for those who have done so, they have very, very much become part of the community. And I think that if you look at the communities where these people are, a lot of them have settled in loyalist communities. That's where the population maybe is declining, and that's where the houses are. And remember, the vast majority of people from Unionist Protestant persuasion would not have anything to do with the very, very small minority of people who are causing this trouble. It is really coming from loyalist paramilitarism. And that influence really should be gone out of society. It's very tragic that it isn't. And all we can do is to try and continue to education. It's the most important thing. I mean, that's my background, education, educating children about tolerance, about love, about nurturing, about welcoming, about being hospitable, about having values, having integrity, compassion, kindness. They're all the values that we try and imbue young people with in schools. And the more you can do that, then the more you realize that people will understand that when we had to emigrate, we relied on other communities to accept us. And it's interesting, the week of the All-Ireland final 2 years ago, myself and Tom Ryan met the Taoiseach, who was Simon Harris at the time, and a few people. And they were going through it at that stage. If you remember, there was somebody from another country who had stabbed a few children, and there was riots and everything else. And they asked if the GAA could make any gesture towards it. And that's why I mentioned in my speech, you know, today we think of the Irish people who went to other countries and relied on those countries to take them in and give them homes. And we're thinking of those because it is genuine that there are 2 big days that Irish people abroad really feel lonely. It's Christmas Day and the day of the All-Ireland final. It is true. And I thought it was important just to, A, to send that message out, and B, to remind people that we are a nation of immigrants as well. We went, and we're all over the world, and which is why there's 1,500 GAA clubs all over the world as well. Everywhere Irish people go, first thing to do is to set up a GAA club. So that is a challenge for us, Tim, there's no doubt, to try and make our organisation a place where people who are new Irish want to come and want to be involved in, and we are making big efforts to try and achieve that.
And we've had some examples. My family are from Cork City, so the likes of Sean O'Halpine, and you know, they start, but it seems to stop and start. So the more we can encourage diversity, the better. If I can I come to you, you're from Peace Players, so thank you for coming today. Gareth Harpy, is he your boss? Is he?
Yeah.
No, right. Better behave. Is here tonight, so thank you for Peace Players. And obviously, maybe you could outline to the audience what Peace Players is about, how it originated through basketball, and what it's doing today to promote reconciliation through sport.
Yeah. So thank you. So Peace Players Northern Ireland, we've been working in Northern Ireland for over 20 years now, but we're also an international organisation. So we have a site that runs in South Africa, one in the Middle East, and 5 cities across the United States as well. So like I said, we've been in Northern Ireland for over 20 years now. And we use the neutral sport of basketball to bring children and young people of all backgrounds together. And our whole preface is that children who play together can learn to live together. One of our main core values is seeing people as people. I know it's been touched on a lot through a lot of what everybody's been sharing today at different points, but seeing people as people is really the crux of what everything comes to. On and off the court, it's not just on the court that we do basketball, but we do good relations through sport work. So every activity that the young people and the children do on the court, we really lean into experiential learning. So we want them to feel on the court, this is going to sound a little bit strange, but bear with me. We want them to feel stereotypes through the activities that we put into place. We want them to feel discriminated against. We want them to feel frustrated with each other and everything like that with the activities that we create for them to play on the court. Because the best thing then is after that activity, when we debrief it, the children and young people have that fresh experience of, I just felt like that, I didn't like that. And then we open it up to, where do you see people experience that in school, at home, in your community? And they're really able to relate to people. So maybe if it is a child or young person who goes, well, I don't really know what a stereotype is, or if I've been stereotyped against, or if I do it to other people, it's really getting everybody in the room in a safe, fun, and inclusive environment, people from all different backgrounds, but helping them to understand that seeing people as people is the most important thing when it comes to Northern Ireland. And we use various other sports as well. We use the Game of Three Halves model. So over the summer and through some of our programs, we'll have football, Gaelic football, rugby, as well as basketball, to give children and young people the opportunity who have maybe never played or had the opportunity to play that sport before because of the school system and the way that it's laid out, that they have the opportunity to try something new, learn something about their teammates by playing that sport and learning a little bit more about their culture, their tradition, their background as well. And because all of our programs is basically come one, come all. It's open to everybody. And like I said, it's an opportunity for people to try new things. And basketball works, like I said, it's a neutral sport. It's not claimed or owned by any tradition, but it still has that very Americanized back into it of it's having hype, it's high fives, it's everybody together on the court, working together in teams. And that's just the beauty of why we use basketball. And I think for me, in my story, so I'm originally from Dublin. I've been living in Northern Ireland for 13 years now. I come from a Catholic background, not a practicing Catholic background, but my family, I grew up in the school system in Dublin, so that's how I would have grown up. But through the youth club in my area in Blackrock in South Dublin, it was part of the Methodist Church. So I got involved in the Methodist Church as a young person, as a young leader. I've always wanted to work with young people since I was small, being a junior leader in that youth club. And I moved to Northern Ireland on Team on Mission, which is a gap year program with the Methodist Church. And you don't really get to choose where you go whenever you join things like Team on Mission. And I found myself as Aoife from Dublin in Lurgan for 2 years. That was a very interesting place for me to start off with, because if you know anything about Lurgan, it has that invisible line straight down the middle of the town. But it worked for me because I was Aoife from Dublin. But through being involved in the Methodist Church, I decided outside of my family to be baptized as a Protestant because that was my faith. And through being involved in the Methodist Church, I believed in the faith that I was learning and that I was like teaching young people as well. So Aoife from Dublin, living in Lurgan, being a Protestant, it was really useful tool for me, but also really confusing for the people of Lurgan as well, as you can imagine. So there were times, I grew up in Dublin, I learned history in school, but I didn't know a lot about the conflict. I was very shielded from it whenever I was growing up of what was happening in Northern Ireland, what had happened. So one of my first experiences of sectarianism was I had 3 kids who came to my youth club in Lurgan. that stopped coming because their family found out that their youth leader was called Aoife. And that was very strange to me because, again, I was very shielded from the conflict and stuff in Northern Ireland. But I had a great time for my 2 years in Lurgan. People say a lot of things about Lurgan, but it holds a very, very special place in my heart and always will. And when I moved to Belfast, I went to YouthLink to do my degree in youth and community work. And because I had been involved in church youth work for a couple of years, through our course, we were encouraged to explore youth work in a new context to the church. And that's when I found out about Peace Players. And I only had to do 100 hours of voluntary work with Peace Players. But genuinely, from the first day that I walked into the Summer Jam tournament to get straight away was 8 hours straight away on the first day, which was great for me. It got under my skin, and it's just been an itch that I haven't been able to fully scratch or get rid of. And that was in 2017. So I started off as placement. I came on as a coach, and for the past 5 years, I've been a full-time staff member. And my story, I also did not have a lick of basketball before I started in Peace Players either, so that was a really interesting time as well. But if you're a strong facilitator and you can tell people, oh, show me how to do this. Okay, what could they do better? What could they improve on? And what did they do really well? Okay, do it again. Brilliant. Everybody grab a basketball and do it. I haven't touched a basketball the whole time, but everybody knows what they're doing. So facilitation skills is what really got me through. And I think with not having basketball, with not growing up in Northern Ireland and being Aoife from Dublin, who's actually a Protestant, that gave me a really unique story to come into Peace Players and actually bring all that stuff of, I was learning a lot about the real experiences of young people and families and communities by being in the room with them when I didn't know a lot. So I was able to learn from them sharing stories with their peers and them sharing experiences with their peers. I learned basketball by facilitating it and trying it out with young people. I think basketball is also a great tool that it's very, very accessible. So we're able to you could grab a ball and bring it anywhere with you, similar to all the other sports that have been mentioned as well. So I was just able to learn and grow alongside children and young people in my job. And one of my favorite stories is we do a classroom activity with flags and symbols when we have Catholic primary school and Protestant primary school together for our twinning program. We do an activity on flags and symbols, have very open conversations and think about what words we associate it with it and talk about, well, who's in the room and stuff. And we were talking a lot about the images of the Union flag and the tricolour were there, and young people had different things to say, and they were challenged to think about the people who are in the room and ask questions. And I turned around to this P6 class in West Belfast and said, well, I'm Irish. I was born in Dublin, but I'm a Protestant, so what flag do I fly? And all the kids were like, how does that work? Really, how does that work? And the conversations are great, but as soon as you go onto the court, it's all just about relationships and shared identity on the court. Kids really don't care whether they're a Catholic or a Protestant. They care that they're passing to each other, that they're having fun, that they're getting to come to this free program every single week and go to these camps and experience all these different sports that their peers have had the opportunity to experience, but they haven't. And just echoing what everybody has said, like, sport is such a powerful tool to unite people. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your religion, what language you speak. Like, sport transcends all of that, no matter what sport it is. And yeah, like I said, I've been working in Peace Players since 2017, and I'm still learning to use the power of sport. Like I said, at the early days, I was able to learn from children and young people about the conflict, about the sport. But every single room that I walk into that has a mixed group of young people, no matter what their religion, gender, background, anything like that, I'm learning every single day. And I think that's one of the most powerful things ever. We talk about young people being the future, and they're going to be the future of leading this country, and we really need to, but like, they're doing it now. They're having hard conversations in rooms, they're playing sport together. It doesn't happen a lot in the older generation at the minute, and like, it's starting to get there, but like, children and young people, they just want to have fun. They just want to kick a ball about, bounce a ball about, and they're the future because they're doing it now and they're practicing it when a lot of us aren't yet.
Thanks, Eva. I think we should contact Lisa McGee, the creator of Dairy Girls. I think she could make a story out of your personal life. A dub who was a Catholic, now a Protestant, and went to Lurgan. My wife's from Portadown. I better not say anything about Lurgan or Portadown. Just in terms, when those kids didn't turn up because the parents didn't like the name Aoife, how do you deal with that personally? And also, how does Peace Players deal when there's issues of community tension? So, in the last few weeks, in terms of the race riots, how do you sort of try to educate the young people you're working with to try to deal with those sort of tense situations?
I think when I was in Lurgan, it wasn't too long whenever it happened. And I think I reflect on this a lot because I panicked a little bit because it's not something that I'm used to. Sectarianism was very new to me, especially me experiencing it. So one of the first things that we did was myself and my boss at the time, we went down to the house of the children and young people, and I got a chance to meet the parents and talk to them a little bit and just get them to know me. And then after that, we incorporated once every couple of months, we would have a parents' evening and invite all the parents down so they can meet the young leaders. Because understandably, if you're sending your kids to any kind of club, organization, if you don't have that relationship with the parents, it's very easy for the parents to pull the children and young people out of the program. So I think relationship with the parents and them getting to know you is the most important part, because all they really want to know is that their children are safe, they're having fun, they're off the streets and all that kind of thing. So I think meeting with the parents was one. I think there was a little part of me of, I got a bit of a nickname then after that, because if you spell out Aoife, if you read it really quickly, sometimes it can read as Alfie. So I got given the nickname Alfie then, and that was on all of my t-shirts and hoodies for the rest of the time that I was in Lurgan. And I adopted that and I accepted it, but looking back on it now, I kind of wish that I shouldn't have felt like I had to change my name and change my identity in that space. But I think, again, meeting with the parents and bringing them on board was one of the most important things at that time. And then when it comes to Peace Players, we recently put out a statement when it came to everything that kicked off in Belfast the past couple of weeks, because it was really, we were really heartbroken whenever everything kicked off, as I'm sure absolutely everyone was. And I think we had just come off the back of our annual Summer Jam tournament, and Summer Jam happens as a celebration of the end of the term of all the programs that have just happened. And in Queen's PEC on that day, the 5th of June, just before everything kicked off in Belfast, we had over 170 children and young people from Ballymena, from Newry, from Newcastle, from all over Belfast, from Macrofelt, from Bangor, from all over Northern Ireland, celebrating being part of a cross-community program for 12 to 20 weeks. And they all showed up, and it was a day of celebration and basketball matches and good relations. And all of those children and young people who registered were put on mixed teams. We made sure that everybody had a friend that they knew, but they were all on completely mixed teams in their age groups with new people that they met on the day, with some new coaches, some familiar coaches. And that was a day of just pure celebration of like what sport can do and how it can unite people. And it was just an incredible, incredible day of just smiles, dancing on the basketball court and off the basketball court. And then when everything kicked off a couple of days later, it was just like, what is going on and what are people doing? If only people could see more of the amazing work that organizations all over Northern Ireland are doing, and just realize that children who could play together can learn to live together. People who play together can learn to live together. And just that idea of seeing people as people, half of this stuff would not be happening. So there was a big like heartbreak moment of, oh my goodness, how could we just come off the high of this and then straight away be dealing with this? But I think for us, like I said earlier, it's just that constant reminder of one of our core values of seeing people as people, seeing people as human. If we play together, we can learn to live together, using sport to bring people together. It doesn't matter who you are off the court, like on the court, you need to be able to trust each other, respect each other, your opponents, your referees, and that sport is one of the most important things that brings people together, because building up that trust and that respect for all of those people, there has to be that element of teamwork and community off the court and learning about each other. So yeah, just that reminder of seeing people as people. I don't think any of us can say it enough really today.
Thank you so much. Adam, obviously you're playing for Brantwood, but you've had a lot of experience with Limestone United's cross-community project, and they've done some great work in the Limestone Road, North Belfast area. Can you tell us a bit about your role in Limestone and then Brantwood? And obviously I know you encourage other young people to get involved in peace building. Maybe talking a bit about that sort of work as well.
Well, I took part in a youth club called Manculler Youth Club. It's just on the Limestone Road. And I've been there since I was about 5 years old, I would say. And I can remember every worker since that day. And they've never changed for me growing up. But they've always taught me like core values as never judge people, never judge a book by its cover. And it's one of the most important things when you're growing up in such a diverse place. Like the Limestone Road is just there, and then you have the New Lodge, Tigers Bay. I have family that are in New Lodge, and I would never grow up to have hate for a Catholic or anyone else. But in Manculler, when I was like 5, all the people growing up there are coming in from different races, different religions, and they'll never be judged because of such great people that work in the youth club. So how I've helped bring them together would be just making them go and play football in the halls, per se, the sports hall, getting them up there and not caring if people are going to hate on you just because you don't know how to play football or you don't know how to take part in the Jenga downstairs. Just get together, make new friends, even if you haven't spoke. You're going to be able to open up. People always have a say in sport. I don't think politics and religion and all that should ever have a comment in it. For me personally, when I step on a football pitch, there's 99 problems in your head, and it just drops down to 0 straight away.
Where do you play?
Position right back at the moment now, so it is. Smallest player on the pitch, by the way, so don't know how that works, but
Like a tank, though.
I can jump, and that's about it. Or I might do someone's shoulder as well, that may work too. But football for me personally, like anything I go through, once I step on that pitch, as I said, 99 problems straight down to 0. It's 90 minutes that are the best 90 minutes of your life, and that I'll never forget after. And one thing that sports does bring is, even if I get hit at the biggest, dirtiest tackle on the pitch, at the end of that 90 minutes, you're up and you're shaking someone's arm. And
That doesn't know what happened in Gaelic.
well, sometimes it may not if the decision didn't go your way, but personally for me, it's all about respect at the end of it, and that's it.
Very good. And tell me, this Limestone Road, for people who don't know North Belfast, as you said, it's an interface between New Lodge and Tigers Bay. And if you go back about 15 years, there was quite serious rioting. And obviously, Brian Caskey, who is where is he on holidays at the moment?
In Orlando right now.
He couldn't be here tonight. Lucky him. We've got better weather. But Brian Caskey was a police officer working the beat there, and then he started working with Mount Collier and some of the other clubs and brought them together. So obviously you can have people playing a key role. So how important have those leaders been, like Brian? I know he's not a very good soccer player these days, but
No,
obviously he's played a key role in terms of pulling this together.
Yeah, well, personally, from the day I met Koski, I could tell it would be someone that I would want to give my all to, and every minute of my life, he's helped me massively. So currently, right now, Limestone are actually my sponsor for my own football club that I play for. For example, last year, he paid £100 right up front just so I could get a full player pack. That comes with shorts, jackets, half zips, every single bit of equipment that a footballer needs, basically. He gave me that in a click of a fingers once I asked, and so now if I perform on a Saturday very well, which might not happen, so if I perform at my top best and I get man on match, a goal or assist, Limestone basically get a shout out on our page at Brantwood's Instagram or Facebook, and literally just coming into the new season there, I was a bit scared in case he wasn't going to sponsor me again, because £100's £100 in the end of the day, and not so many people have it, but Brian definitely does. Like, he definitely does have £100. So I texted him straight away and I said, listen, Brian, I'm going to want you to be my sponsor again this year. And he said, not a problem, Adam. You do so much for us, and that's all we would give back. So Brian is definitely a massive, massive person for bringing people together, no matter where you're from. He's taught me a lot of discipline as well, because even if you're young heads, you're always told what you're from a person that you look up to. You always listen to them, but knowing people like Brian, never spoke to him in my life before, and as soon as I met that guy, like, he brought so much peace. He's just one of them type of people. Good guy. That's just what Brian is in the end of the day. Good guy. Like,
I mean, and the same question I ask Aoife, obviously, from time to time there is community tensions in New Lodge, Tigers Bay, and also recently with the race riots. How does your club and Limestone help try to deal with those sort of difficulties?
obviously, everyone saw all the tension around in Belfast happening lately now after the incident, but things like Limestone, there's a Holy Family Youth Club that's there, and there's Mount Coolor Youth Club that's there, and they're literally 5 minutes, or not even 5 minutes, sorry, 2 minutes beside each other, and being that so close, we're on the main interface on the Limestone Road. Like, I take part in Mount Coolor Youth Club, and I could walk up and sit in Holy Family without someone calling me a unionist or a Protestant or anything like that. I could sit there and just become one with everyone else in the room. It's just the way it is. Getting involved in things like Limestone, especially, we have people from Holy Family Youth Club or Newington Youth Club that come down and play an 11-a-side game in Seaview. So it's all religion doesn't matter when you step onto that pitch, and in the end of the day, when you're shaking hands with someone and you're saying well done, no matter what the score is, it doesn't really take a place in your mind.
Great, Adam. I'm going to open up to the floor very shortly, so we have 2 mics. But just before that, obviously, Ciara, we've talked about your sporting journey from Portaferry to the European Championships in 2024. But obviously, in recent weeks, we've been reading and listening to you speak about your journey with your health, and Jarlath spoke about it earlier. So obviously, that's a new challenge. Obviously, you had to deal with a lot of injuries in athletics. You missed out on big Olympic games because of injury. So now this is a bigger challenge, but obviously, how does your career in athletics give you energy and courage to deal with this journey now?
I think I'm very lucky to have had the athletic career that I did have. It's something that I feel extremely grateful for, and many people would have said I was a very resilient athlete. I wish I didn't have to have been so resilient during my career. I got an awful lot of injuries. But you know what? Maybe it's a blessing and a curse, because the fact that I had to deal with that in the sporting context, and it's one of the things that I did say, like, you know, sport is that wee microcosm for us. I ended up learning an awful lot of skills that have paid off now for the resilience that I have to have in the face of having a cancer diagnosis. The strength that I learned to have throughout my injuries on the track. I had 2 surgeries on both ankles, which is pretty tough during an athletic career. That resilience, that determination, that goal setting, and people call it resilience. Sometimes I think it's just pig-headedness and ignorance, just far on. But yeah, I think I learned an awful lot of skills, and there's so many transferable skills, and I suppose that's what we're talking about today. Whenever we talk about how sport and reconciliation can come together, we're chatting, like Adam's saying, about having a role model with regards to having that person within the youth club that puts faith in you, that backs you. It's the same whenever you're coming to the club, that sense of identity. Like, whenever the kids are like, oh, this wee girl called Aoife's a wee Catholic, I'm not going to go. And then they find out that she's not. And like, the resilience that you had, I think all of us are constantly learning up here. And I felt throughout my athletic career, I was constantly learning. I was upskilling, I was developing that. It's really stood to me now with regards to facing this battle head on. And I also think I'm extremely grateful and lucky. I think all of us could reflect on that throughout the journeys we've been on, the people that are behind us. I have an amazing family, amazing friends, but I feel like that sense of community that sport has brought me is so much broader than my little group of people from Portaferry or my friends that I've met along the way. The community I have around me is the entire sporting community, and I think it goes beyond that too. I feel extremely lucky to have the whole Irish nation, both north and south, basically wrap me in their arms and be there for me. The messages that have come through since sharing my diagnosis and recently, and sharing a bit more about the stage of my diagnosis, the amount of love and outpouring of love that I've experienced is phenomenal. And so I try to keep reflecting on that during the dark days. And I think, like, it is, whenever you're reflecting on you having a phenomenal get together with all of the kids from all over the north, and then a couple of days later or whatever, having a display of hatred on the streets of Belfast. We have to focus on those good days, and I think we need to shine more light on them, and we need to shine more light on the phenomenal work that people like Grassroots, like the two people beside me, are doing, because there will always be something. For me, in my life right now, there's always the bad guy, the cancer. There's going to be people stoking hate on the streets. They're the cancer of our society, and we need to work as hard as we can to stamp that out, because there's so much good. And I personally am getting through all of my kind of health stuff by focusing on the joy and trying to find that joy in every day. I think reflecting up here on the stage, that's the joy that we can find within all of our communities. And yeah, so much of your life reflects in your sport, and your sport reflects in your life. But for me, I'm going to focus on all the good times that I have going forward, the amazing good times I had in the past, and not let those dark times weigh us down too much.
Thank you. So we're now open to questions. I think there's 2 mics available. Paul's got one here and the gentleman on the left. So if there's any questions from the floor for the panel members, just put your hand up. Will you please identify who you are before you ask the question?
Everybody's going to be nervous.
Justy.
I guess I'm like others in the room. I'm inspired by the panel you have assembled here tonight, Tim, on the Hume Foundation. I'm inspired by Jarlath Burns, who's been a huge leader in our community for a long time, a leader on the pitch as a player, and a leader in our community. I'm inspired by Aoife and Adam, by your words, and by, most of all, by Ciara Mageean. I think we're all mesmerised by her courage and her bravery, and I think we all should pay immense tribute to her and what a leader she is in Irish society, not alone on the sports pitch or on the track. You're a huge leader in Irish society. Ciara, I want to pay massive tribute to you. There is a man in the audience tonight, a guy called Tim O'Connor, who was an Irish diplomat, and he was very involved with the peace process with Seamus Mallon, a good friend of Seamus Mallon. And he talked about how every decision had to be walked through the doorway of honourable accommodation. And we're not seeing very much honourable accommodation on our streets, and there's sort of lingering unacceptable sectarianism, a lingering unacceptable racism, which is very prevalent. As Tim describes it, the kindling has been laid, and there is a heightening of tensions, and we can feel it. I can feel it in the halls of the assembly, and I can feel it in the communities, and that's sad, and we're not seeing the proper political leadership to move us forward progressively. But Ciara, I'm not sure if you're aware, you're part of the Strangford Arc. The Strangford Arc, there's a 43-mile radius arc, or 43-mile curvature arc between Strangford and Hollywood. There's you at the tip of Portaferry, at the tip of Strangford. There's Rhys McLennan and Newton Ards, world champion, Olympic champion, and there's Rory McIlroy in Hollywood. 43-mile arc, 3 global sports heroes. And we can focus in on our sectarianism that's here, or the lingering sectarianism, the lingering racism, or we can focus in on making this, I've spoken about this in our APG and Sport installment, we can focus in on making the North a hotbed for sporting achievement and use our 3 heroic figures, not just in this island, but globally. And why are we not building on that and having a fearsome ambition to have every person, young person, try to be like you and try to emulate what you and those others on the Strangford Arc have achieved and elsewhere, and be a place of sporting excellence and ambition. And that's where we can bring all communities together to achieve something special and be a wonderful part of this globe.
Well, I just say, I think that's County Down, so maybe we just have a special ability in County Down. Maybe that's Kate's born in Dundalk, and I don't know her. I think her parents are pretty like I think she's born here in Newry, so hence why Kate, having been from over the border, gets to compete for Team NI. But yeah, I think that's something phenomenal, and something that Nigel Ringland highlighted to me after the Olympic Games was that whenever you're breaking down, they refer to the home nations in the Commonwealth. Whenever you look at, Ireland as a whole, it's tough for us to maybe win medals globally. GB has a much higher population density. But whenever you look at England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, we were the most prolific medal winners in the entirety of that. Obviously, we have athletes that compete for both GB and NI and Ireland. But I was extremely proud, and there's so many more athletes, like that's just a handful. We have so many more athletes even just in that Strangford arc, both para athletes and Paralympic athletes and Olympic athletes. And it's something that I'm extremely proud of, and it is something that we should build. Like, listen, I'm now living in Dunmurry and we're very close to Casement Park, and I know that that's a bone of contention with regards to politicians standing in the way of sport development. I think that us up here are a reflection on where we want to have our nation and our communities going, and hopefully we have many more politicians there that are pushing for that unity of people and giving our kids that opportunity, because everybody up here is giving our youngsters an opportunity to go out and strive for the best that they can be. Not every young athlete is going to make an Olympic Games, a Paralympic Games. Not every young athlete is going to be a major winner or getting a green jersey, but they can find love in their sport, and they can find a purpose in their lives through that passion. And the more we can do that, then the better our wee island will be.
You mentioned, Tim, there, a very inspirational person. I'm glad you did. You talked about honourable accommodation, and it took a lot of honourable accommodations to get us to where we are at the moment. And you contrasted that to where we are now at the moment. And I note that your party leader has just come in, Claire. And Claire was on the television 2 weeks ago whenever the height of the riots. And she was asked about this, and was asked about leadership and about the importance of leaders being able to educate your people and bring them out of that intolerance. And she said something that I actually texted her after us and said, this was brilliant comment. She says, one of the problems in Northern Ireland, we have leaders who validate their fears and lean into their prejudices. Validate the fears that people have and lean into their prejudices. And that's a lack of leadership. That's not leadership at all. Leadership is having the difficult conversation, like the difficult conversation that leaders had to have whenever we were coming out of conflict here. Like the tough days that people had, like John Hume, Seamus Mallon, Martin McGuinness, Jerry Adams, all of those people had to have to take us out of conflict and to reassure and convince people we are going to a better place. That's what leadership is. And challenging people who would have prejudices. I see it all the time, for example, with the Irish language, with the prejudice towards the Irish language. And people saying, well, in our community, our people don't want that Irish sign there. They won't. But that's, again, leaning and validating prejudices instead of saying, no, there is no threat to that. That is just people who want to speak their language. Or even seeing GA jerseys walking up in the street. That's just kids who are proud of their club and want to wear their GA jersey. Leaning into fears and validating prejudices are one of the major challenges that we have in certain sections of our civic society. And we're not at a stage yet where those prejudices are being challenged. And until we get there, we're going to continue to have sporadic bouts of hatred and intolerance coming onto the streets. And that's pessimistic to say that, Tim, but it's realistic as well. And we really need all to try and educate these young people to go to a better place of understanding.
Linda Irvine's a member of the Hume Foundation board, and she's shown that in East Belfast through Truss and the Irish Language School that she can see off all the political opposition, and she's won. And because people are coming in their droves to learn the Irish language, the Irish road, and there's been very little intimidation of the families who sent their kids to the school. She is a profile of courage, but she's shown that leadership in her own community when it wasn't easy to do that. Other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Down here to the left.
Thank you. Do I have to stand up like Justin or not?
Yes. Can't see you.
Thanks, Tim. My name's Richard Bullock, everybody, and when I came in here this evening, Tim finally relaxed for the first time in 48 hours that it wasn't the DUP spot of the same name.
I was hoping it was.
Well, Sorry, I'll go. Listen, I wanted to be here tonight for two reasons. Firstly, huge respect for both Jarlath and Ciara, two of the most articulate, thoughtful contributors in Irish sport and sort of wider commentary, but also this means a lot to me as well. First interviewed Ciara when she was 17. She'd come back with an international medal, and she was exactly the same emotionally intelligent person she is now, and she's still that 17-year-old girl as well. So well done, Ciara, and never change. But just what Ciara said there about representing different things in the overlapping circles. I mean, two sports people from this area who hugely respected Rory Best, Caroline O'Hanlon, without speaking for them or their background. Rory's maybe from one perceived background, but the pinnacle of his sport was captaining the All-Ireland rugby team and was very, very proud to do it and worked hard to get there. Likewise, Caroline, maybe from a perceived different background, the pinnacle of her sport, captaining the Northern Ireland netball team and being the flag bearer in Gold Coast for the overall Team NI. And again, that's about sport. That's about people working hard and being respected for that. And I think Rory and Caroline are both hugely respected. But the other thing, and I suppose my question really to you is, sorry for being long-winded, but is really that importance of stepping outside. We've kind of touched on this, stepping outside our comfort zone and using our voice if we feel we have one. Jarlath, I interviewed you and did a feature for the newsletter back, you'll recall, back in 2008. I'd been talking to Jarlath at an Armagh Sports Awards dinner. I kind of chaired the panel. Jarlath was there as a guest, and at that time the newsletter maybe slightly more open to it than there would be now, sadly, but it was still kind of outside the comfort zone. There was a bit of pushback, but over a couple of years there, we did a number of things. Armagh ladies got to the early All-Ireland final. Hopefully they'll be back this year now in the 20th anniversary, but Bronagh O'Donnell, the captain from that team, proud Cross-Midland woman, I brought her to the Ireland-England rugby match at Croke Park, that famous game in February 2007, a few months later. Again, to do a sort of a colour piece of her impression of it, and you know, it was my lifelong sport. And Willie Anderson talks about a run of vein always meant to him the hairs rising in the back of his neck because it meant he was about to 2 minutes later kick the crap out of people and get the crap kicked out of him. So rugby's been my lifelong sport. So from my background, that's what that meant to me. So almost myself and Bronagh were there that day. It was my sport and her stadium, if you like. And the other one was Mila Bratton, Mila Campbell, who will be known to many in the room. Brought her to Windsor Park for a Northern Ireland game when they were in the middle of the sort of the Healy years, again as a journalist for a colour piece. And I just noticed at half-time in the lounge that the actual light bulbs were red, white and blue in the lounge, at the old Linfield lounge at the old Windsor Park. So, you know, I probably wouldn't have noticed that, only Mila was there with me. So, you know, those are the small gestures. But the final thing I just wanted to say, for the last 20 years nearly, I've been involved with ladies Gaelic football and the GAA, and I wouldn't be from a traditional background, if you want to put it that way, but in all that time there's only been one time that I've heard anything untoward, and it's back to what Jarlath says about, you know, kind of people's perceptions as opposed to actually stepping in the room. And it was quite a funny one. It was two 12-year-old girls along the side, or let's say 12-year-old girls along the sideline of a thing, and they were walking along. I was sort of inside because I was covering the match, so I was inside the fence. They were outside the fence, and they were talking about whoever they were talking about, and said, and they were really weird. And then the other one says, probably Protestants, you know, and it was a very innocent, harmless remark. But the final thing, you know, the weekend game against Armagh Waterford was the 168th Armagh ladies match in a row that I've done a report on. All of those have been for the Ulster Gazette, which has been owned, as you know, by Lord Kilclooney over many years. So again, that has sort of brought that round in terms of trying to make sport in that particular newspaper, which had maybe a particular colour in the past, you know, make it about sport, and then through sport people get to know personalities and so forth. So look, and again, finally, after, you know, 15 minutes waffle, I mean, Jarlath and Ciara, is that sort of important? You're both people with brilliant articulacy, people who are prepared to step outside your comfort zone, people who have walked in circles where you can do that. Do you feel that's a really important thing that we all should try in our own small way to do? Step outside the comfort zone and use our voice?
I definitely think it is. I would never have achieved what I did on my sport without stepping outside my comfort zone. I think the greatest achievements that we ever have is whenever we push ourselves beyond that comfort. I, as an Irish sports person, as a female sports person, for years, female sport wasn't represented properly in our media. There was a little movement, 20 by 20 happened in Ireland, and they were trying to get women's coverage in our newspapers up to at least like 20%. You know, we weren't asking for much. We weren't asking for equality, 50% female sport, 50% male. We were just looking to increase that to 20%. And it's been a testament to the hard work of the people behind those movements, you know, to get female sport out there, to our journalists. And thank you very much for your years of covering, in particular, the Armagh ladies football. Like we need to back the changes we want to see. So whenever we were talking about that movement, I was like, how do you do it? How do you go and you back female sport? And like, I grew up in a GA club. I would have travelled everywhere to watch our hurlers play. Did they travel to watch our camogues? No. So I was like, right, well, what are you going to do? For me, it was like, I'm going to turn up to more of the girls' games. I'm going to get, like, I was always at the camogie games, was playing, but then even after I was going supporting them. But, you know, say that was our Irish rugby girls, I'll get there. And thankfully they had record numbers at their game down recently in the Six Nations. And I was like, that was phenomenal. And to see the pride and the happiness that brought the girls. It's the same for our footballers. It's the same for your local hockey club and your local GA club. Get out and support them. And that's the changes that we need to see. So that's one thing for me for women's sport. Be that something that's cross community, cross whatever you want to call it. Why don't you get out and you watch some football? I recently got an interview by an Athletics Weekly journalist, and he was wearing a Northern Irish football jersey. And I know him very well. I've known him for years. And he's like, oh, I thought I'd keep my jersey on. He's like, oh, maybe this isn't the team you support. And I was like, you're just making an assumption because I'm a passionate Irish woman. I was like, we have two blooming good football teams in this wee nation. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, if we could join forces, it would be even better. I'm like, why don't we have that? Because phenomenal players on both teams. And I was like, I am so proud whenever I see the Northern Irish football team do well, whenever I see the Irish football team do well, whenever I see players from wherever they're from, I am so proud. I'm so proud whenever I witness a Northern Irish chef on the Great British Bake Off. So proud. That's putting our wee part of the world on the map. Recently, it was a girl I went to school with. I can remember watching and being like, oh my God, like the pride. And I knew her through school, but you know, we need to be that change. And as you said, use our voices. And I'm a strong advocate for using your voices for social good. I don't shy away from it. Maybe at times I get grief for it and people say, I know, like you chatted, sports shouldn't be political. Fortunately, I feel like it is. By the very act of going out and competing for my country, I'm making a stand. It shouldn't be political in a negative aspect. We should be trying to move ourselves forward. And for me, it's important to use this platform to try to bring about that change in all aspects towards the good. And I'll probably, you said you would waffle, I'm well able. So yeah, I think it's very important that we do that. I think it's very important for everybody in the room to be that. And as well, I feel extremely grateful to be here today. Whenever my agent got the message through, and it probably came through Joe, so it probably went to my mummy. And she's not my agent, but sometimes she is. Sometimes, especially in the journey that I'm on and going through all my treatment, they're like, Ciara's tired. She's been doing a lot. And obviously last week had a book launch, very fancy. But whenever this came through, my agent in the South said, I think this is something that you feel passionate about to do this for the John and Pat Hume Foundation. To be here and to be able to chat about this is a testament to the people that went before us, that brought about peaceful change in Northern Ireland, that meant that us up here hopefully didn't experience the experiences that many of you in the audience may have done. I feel very lucky to not have had to live in a Northern Ireland that it was in the past. And I want to express my gratitude to those in the audience that were part of that journey and continue to be part of that journey. But it's something that all of us need to do. And it's something that we need to do to not shy away from those conversations, to pull people up whenever they don't live up to the expectations of what we want and we need our community and our world to be. And I get pulled up on things. Like I might be chatting, my little brother's gay, and I might be talking, and Brent goes, actually, do you know what? That's a statement that some people might find hard. You know, I'll have difficult conversations with him to be like, how do you feel? Do you feel comfortable at home? Do you want to move home? Do you feel comfortable, like whenever it comes to voting, me and Brent sit down and we don't vote strictly on coloured lines. We're like, who represents what is we're most passionate about? And sometimes I get my mummy to do my proxy vote because I haven't done my postal vote in on time. She might not be happy with me going, here's my numbers. Because it's like, oh, would you not put this one first? And I'm like, this is how I'm voting. I feel passionate about LGBTQI plus rights. So this is how I'm doing it. This is what's important to me right now. And I'll do that every single time. And I urge everybody to go out and vote and to do that, because, to bring about positive change, we need to do it with our feet. We need to do it in the voting ballots, and we need to do it with our voices to continue to be louder than the negative ones out there.
There's just time for 2 more questions, so if there's anybody else here in the middle. Oh, it's Tim O'Connor. By the way, Tim is a sportsman as well today. He had 41 points off 14. He's going to be cut to 2 tomorrow.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much, Tim, for that. I'm Tim O'Connor. I'm a Limerick man masquerading here in Northern Ireland. Hello, Mark, and hello, Claire, and Justin, and everybody here. Look, it's Aoife. I'm very proud of you from Blackrock. Aoife from Blackrock. I think it's actually probably a good series. And by the way, Declan Lawn might regret that he didn't come here tonight, because I think Tim Atwood is going to be writing a new series, except Tim, don't call it Red Lights. Okay, just that process. I guess I only have a couple of minutes. I suppose it was one of the privileges of my life to work for the Irish government in part of the peace process. But I guess the biggest thing of all for me is a privilege as a Munster fella up here, just Jarlath, in the middle of all of this, was like you in the GA, you go south, we go north, it was actually the friendships. And I suppose there's a presence here tonight among us all that we're here actually for, and that's Seamus Mallon, who was just this extraordinary figure. And I think he'd be very honoured as well that his great friends, John and Pat Hume, are actually providing, the John and Pat Hume Foundation is providing the platform. But I just want to think about what he'd be thinking here tonight in the middle of this, and he would be so bloody proud. He would be so proud that in his beloved Newry, there's a conversation like this happening. And I thank Justin McNulty, Justy. I didn't know you were Justy. That's very nice. For a few remarks to me. He didn't say everything I asked him to say, but I mean, he said most of it, though. No, but I suppose we were having a conversation recently, and I guess I'm in my mid-70s now, so I'm at the ender part of a life. But I think that, I guess what worries me as an old soldier is that we're kind of retreating to what Mark Durkin would call the factory settings. We don't have bodies in the street anymore, thank God. So there's a kind of a luxury to be able to say whatever you want to say, really, and go back. And that's very dangerous. And that's why I was saying to Justin, there's one doorway that John and Pat Hume and Seamus Mallon kept talking about in the years leading up to Good Friday, and that's the door of what we call the honourable accommodation. And to me, no conversation can take place unless it's from that room. And I think sport, therefore, is we have to be looking for the common ground. And sport is so fantastic in that. And I just want to make one other comment of Jarlath and Claire about leadership. You see, the big challenge is, here's the question for leaders. Are you a spokesperson or are you a leader? And they're two very different things. And that's the big challenge. And I think finally sport is actually what brings us together. And sport does so much. And there's been such a brilliant contribution tonight from Jarlath, from the extraordinary Ciara. And I want to say I'm also on the board of Goal in Dublin, a sports charity. And Ciara Mageean is one of our proudest ambassadors. And I just want to say thanks here tonight, Ciara, to you for all you do for Goal. And what an extraordinary ambassador she is for everything on this island, for everybody in this island. And if Ciara Mageean is the future, then we are entirely safe, and that future is safe. Thank you, Ciara. And also then to Adam, you may think you're a fullback. I'd be scared about taking you on now. Of course, I'm an old guy anyway, so I won't be doing that. But you and Aoife, you spoke so well, and you give great hope. And finally, and I know Orla will be wrapping up at the end, Seamus's big piece at the end is a great sportsman, and he's in the final months before sadly he passed away from us. He had one great mantra that I take with me, which is, he said, after everything we've been through, and after all, I don't care what we call this place, as long as we can all call it home. And I think that's the most powerful. I think sport is what brings us all back to home. So thank you all very much for the inspiring evening you've given us. Thank you.
Hey, my name's Jordan. I'm from Newry. I'm currently the secretary of Newry and Armagh SDLP, and I just want to say thanks to everybody that spoke, particularly Adam. I'm a long-suffering Newry City fan, but we'll not get into that. But Aoife, or Alfie, I really found the work that you're doing inspirational. I'd never heard of your organisation before, to be honest with you, but particularly your what you said about your own journey to faith and finding your own way to Christ. I thought that was really, really good, and it just got me thinking there about the link between that and what you're doing in sport. I'm like yourself. I recently recommitted my life to Jesus, and I also love sport. I've taken great joy on a Sunday. Sundays became my favourite day for two reasons: for church, but also hopefully Jarlath's getting over to the athletic grounds. And this past number of months, I've taken a few of my new friends, and somebody touched on it there about friendship. I've taken a few guys from Rich Hill and Portaferry, guys that would march in the 12 over to the athletic grounds, and I could never understand the fear that they're met with getting into the football match for the first time in their life. And one comment Maddie made me was, my father found out I was here today, I'll not have a bed to sleep in the night. But then when they leave, they're thinking, what did I have to fear of there? That was brilliant. Okay, well, even if we drew against Kerry or, or beat by Louth after that, but just more generally, what more can we do to break that down? There's a massive Christian role there and two values that I live by, and it's great to see Father Patrick here from the Dominican as well, and he'll agree with me, is reconciliation and forgiveness. But in sporting organisations and as athletes, what role can we do in sport more generally to break down those barriers where we're not seeing one sport's for one side, one organisation's for another side, and the role that reconciliation can play as part of that, and that I've seen over this past 6 months in particular.
I'd just like to say a few words on behalf of Limestone United. It's been an excellent conversation that's been held tonight. There would have been, it's only that young chap there, Adam, who's representing what's happening in North Belfast with the young people tonight. There would have been more of them, but I mean, you did look at the date, didn't you? There's a lot of tires and pallets to collect. So there was a lot of cancellations going on. Anyway, we're working at that one too, by the way. When we get to the day where the lads from the New Lodge help with the pallets and things right where you want it, then we know that we'll just pack it in and have done our work. Anyway, I just want to leave you on a positive note. Adam's 19. He didn't go. Troubles were over. And there are other young lads, and Limestone runs a girl program too and a junior program that have absolutely no interest in our baggage and the dinosaur work that is done up in the hill and throughout about the stuff and the poison that goes through some houses. These guys, these people, these young people, they just want to grow up together. And they just want employment, which is a big thing. And they want to have a life together and a good life. And they have no interest in politics, no interest in green and orange, no interest in Catholic and Protestants. And as Adam says, he just wants to go there and enjoy his football. So the future's bright with these lads.
I'm going to wrap up now and I'll ask the panel members to have closing comments. Just two things. I want to tell one story about Seamus Mallon, the sportsman. We have a love for horse racing, more gambling. But if Jerry Cosgrove was here tonight, every SDLB headquarters was attacked or bombed during the Troubles. And the current office I worked in at one stage in Ormond Road. and we received a package in the post. And I was upstairs, and Jerry Coswick ran me down and says, Tim, will you come downstairs? We've got this package. I come down, and they said, is that suspicious, Tim? They'd opened it. It was a video cassette with wires to a battery, and there was some bit of gasoline. You could smell it. I says, I think that's a device. So it was a very cold February day. I took it out the back, but it was so cold I didn't put it out the back door. I rang the police. The police rang the bomb squad. Bomb squad comes and says, that's a suspect device. With all the video cameras, we could watch them all suited and booted, take it out the back and do what they had to do. Police forensics come in and they said, could we speak to the person who opened the package? And I says, which one? He says, how many handled the package? 5 of us puts our hands up. And he says, was it past the bloody parcel? And then Seamus Mallon rings as Deputy First Minister to speak to me. He says, Tim, could you go around to the bookies? I want £100 on the first favourite at Newry. So I said, hold on a second. You want a tenner? I want a tenner. And the policeman said, what are you doing? He says, I have to go around to the bookmakers, put on a bet, and we're going to have part of that bet. And he says, anybody else would ring in the media to get around to do interviews. So Seamus always got his priorities right. Could I just ask the panel, politicians obviously been criticised a lot, but obviously, we need the support of government to make things happen. So in terms of support and reconciliation, is there a couple of things you'd want to politicians to do to improve support and reconciliation in the future? That could be policy, it could be funding something else. But what sort of final words would you have? And I'll start with you, Jarlath.
We could build Casement. Be a great start, wouldn't it?
Yep.
We thought that we were going to have a wonderful stadium there that we could have had the Euros in, and Northern Ireland could have played games in. We could have big rugby games in it. We could have GA games in it. Probably not at that stage yet in our journey. Northern Ireland, the IFA have very particular identity. I remember going to a game in Windsor Park one night, and they saw that I was there, the fans and the spying captain, the star, I think, you can stick your Casement Park in a particular place that I would find very painful. And we had a bit of a laugh about that. But the biggest thing for us was to understand that people who supported Northern Ireland would find it very difficult to come over and support Northern Ireland in Casement Park. We have to be big enough to understand that that's a big journey, that particular bridge is very difficult for them to cross. And we have to try and facilitate the crossing of that bridge because we are siloed in where we live, particularly in Belfast. And if you read the book Paisley by Ed Maloney and Andy Pollock, remember they said that Ian Paisley said the problem with a bridge is that it goes over to the other side. But that's what we have to be prepared to do. We have to go over the other side, and we have to understand the concept of othering. I think it was Mark Durkin, maybe who started talking about othering. And it's dehumanizing your opponent, believing that that person is a different ethnicity, different gender, different affiliation than I am. Therefore, they have different sets of feelings than I have. They don't feel the same as I have, so I can inflict pain on them. I was born right in South Armagh, went to college in West Belfast, Catholic school, Catholic college, very committed to education, Catholic education. I would have been somebody who othered, because I'd never really met the Protestant community. And in this very room after the ceasefire, a guy called Brendan McAllister from Mediation Network, got all of the sides together in here, and he started just talking through the councillors and through civic society. And I was asked to come and go to this. That had a very profound effect on me because it got me meeting unionist councillors, people from the Protestant community. And I think that's the sort of stuff. I became lifelong friends with Danny Kennedy, met David Scott of the Orange Order, met all of these people. And I think that once, the thing I talked about at the very beginning about our shared humanity, we are all part of this humanity. If we can get back to that, the person living in that house who has come from Somalia or Khartoum or wherever is a human being who has suffered terribly as a result of war, and they are here for sanctuary, and that house is their sanctuary. Trying to get that understanding into them, and that person can actually help my community. I think that's the challenge that we should all try and face, and be welcoming, be hospitable, and it's just all about having a céad míle fáilte. That's not easy to achieve, but we have to try and believe we can do it.
Thank you. Ciara?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the questions at the back and from the front as well, because there's organisations here that are the example of what we need to do and we need to continue doing. It's a hard question whenever you're like, Ciara, what do you think? I observe global politics the world over. People have been like, do you want to be a politician, not a mission? It seems far too hard. I have too soft a skin. I find it disappointing whenever we have that othering from the people who are meant to be our leaders. I think we need to stop supporting people who do stoke that divide between us. But like, I'm preaching to the converted. These are all open-minded people that are here wanting to talk about reconciliation and bringing people together. I would love to see that. I'd love to see the politicians that are the dinosaurs from back in the day just retire and go away off to pastures and let themselves be there and stop trying to stoke hatred in the young people who are on the stage today, wanting just to, as you said, have employment, have affordable housing, have support and build a family. And as you said, that's people from all different nationalities, all different backgrounds. I think our community is better whenever we are diverse and we learn from one another. I find it hard to then nail down like the specific policies that you would like to do. I'm not a politician, so I can't bring that forward. But I think the more that we have young people like us on stage and the older people like yourself, I'm not going to... all of us young people on stage, I think the more we make our voices known, and we are those people in our communities that continue to do that. And as I said before, pull up the ones that aren't being what we want it to be, because like we all need challenge and we all learn. And the more we're open to learning too, like we all have these prejudices that we bring forward without even knowing. And until you meet somebody, you go, oh yeah, that's something that my mind should change. I do laugh. I have a friend from Sweden. Whenever I told her about the wooden spoon, she was like, you shouldn't hit children. Oh my goodness. And I found myself defending my granny with her wooden spoon. And then I was like, actually, on a long run, I was like, Anna, I got a bit thick there. I was like, yeah, that's not a good thing to have. So, it might be silly little things in your head, but there's so many bigger things in our communities and our and the world over, that if we can just share that love and that understanding for each other, I think that's the way forward.
Adam?
I think a long shot would probably be trying to bring both teams together for the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland team. That would probably be the dream. Plus, there's great players in both of them. I wouldn't be nowhere near the pitch. Nowhere near it. Maybe on the bench, that would be good. But Ciara, you probably say that was it. Bringing both of them together would be the long term, the long shot, everything that everyone would want. But it's finding a place where both sides of the community would feel comfortable and feel safe coming to and watching that game. That would be the main thing, probably.
I think two things pop into my mind. First one is, wouldn't it be great if we got all the politicians on the island together for a football game, a basketball game? I've got great content that we use with our P5s, and they learn so much from that content, and I think those politicians could learn a lot from that content and those activities as well, and actually get them to use sport as a tool for reconciliation and conversation would be great. But I think to the question that was earlier on from the back as well about what can church do, what can politicians do, what can we do, I think just having more opportunities to have that shared, safe, fun and inclusive spaces for young people. I think unfortunately there are some people, as much as we would love to think otherwise, there are some people who live on the island that are just a bit of a lost cause right now, and you can have open dialogue, bring them to safe spaces and stuff like that, and people will have their opinions and they won't change, and that's unfortunate. But on a grassroots level, there's so many organizations that are doing great work, youth centers, everything, there's so much great work going on the grassroots level that just need to be shared, and that good news just needs to be shared more. And I think sometimes in the youth organizations, youth sectors and stuff like that, because of funding streams, unfortunately it feels like some places get really competitive of there are young people and they're coming to our center. But I'd love to see more organisations, clubs, no matter what sporting organisation it's coming from, of going, oh, you'd love to come and do this sport, but you're not free on that night. Well, there's a club down the road that do the same thing as us, and they're open on this night that is available for you. Oh, you've never tried GAA before, come and do it, or let's get the GAA and the rugby working more together. I know there's a lot of that starting to happen and has been happening for years as well, but creating more of those shared spaces in churches, again, sometimes it can feel like it's a little bit competitive of these are our people, they're in our diocese, but at the end of the day, belonging is so important. If people if they feel like they belong to an organization that has a mixture of people, that feeling of belonging is going to help to build that trust and build those relationships as well. So more money for those shared spaces, more sharing of the spaces and the people, and just making sure that we're working together so people feel like they belong. And again, I'll say it until the cows come home, but seeing people as people, that their needs and their wants and their experiences are as equal to our own, and just seeing people and as humans is so important in those spaces as well.
I'm going to call Orla and Mallon to close in a session, but could we give a great round of applause to the wise old man, Jarlath Burns. And the Hume Foundation has the strapline about inspiring leaders for peaceful change making. And I think in the three other speakers, we have profiles of courage, current and future leaders in peaceful change making. So thank you very much. And lastly from me, I think it's always important to quote Seamus before we finish. And Tim O'Connor mentioned Seamus's book, A Shared Homeplace, and he included a quote in that that reflects the commitment to plant trees. And it goes, a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit. That's our challenge today. Thank you very much. And Orla Mallon's going to close.
I feel very ill-equipped to follow what's gone before this evening, but good evening, everyone. I'd like to offer a few words of thanks. Firstly, thank you to Jarlath Burns for your contribution this evening. Jarlath, thank you for sharing your thoughts and experience with us. Your leadership within the GAA and your lifelong commitment to community have given us much to reflect upon. Ciara, I'd like to make particular mention of you. We know and admire your achievements as a European champion and Olympian, but what struck me this evening was the honesty and generosity with which you shared your journey. Your new book, My Greatest Race, tells a story not only of your success, but also of resilience, courage, and determination in the face of adversity. Thank you for sharing those experiences with us. I have no doubt that your story will inspire many people both within and beyond the world of sport. Thank you to Aoife, Redmond and Adam Doak for bringing your experiences and insight to tonight's discussion. The work you do in helping young people build relationships, friendships and understanding across communities is invaluable, and we're very grateful for all that you do. I would also like to say a special thank you to Tim Atwood. Tim, thank you for all the work behind the scenes that you do to make tonight happen and for chairing this discussion so effectively. Tim and my father indeed shared a great love of horse racing and many conversations about the fortunes of various runners over the years. I'm sure Dad would be very pleased to know that Tim is still backing good causes, even if not all the horses come first. I'd like to thank everyone who helped organise tonight's event and the staff here at the Canal Court Hotel for looking after us so well. Finally, thank you all for joining us this evening. The fact that people continue to come together to listen, learn and engage in conversations such as this gives great hope for the future. As Seamus Mallon's daughter, I'm always conscious of how much he valued the simple act of bringing people together. He believed that understanding grows through conversation, shared experiences and human connection. Looking round the room tonight, I think he would have been delighted by the discussion we have had, by the spirit in which it has taken place. In fact, I think it's definitely somewhere up above, Seamus is sitting with a whiskey in hand, and I think he's toasting you all. Thank you once again to our speakers, our panellists, and to all of you. Good evening, everyone. Safe journey home, and thank you.